call it Freaky Friday because every day is a Friday now. I hope everybody's safe, and I hope everybody's staying healthy and all that. We're kind of going through some tough times, but we'll get through this. I'm Guillermo Birmingham. I'm a CPA. I'm a partner of a firm called B2B CFO. It's about 188 of us across the nation. And we offer strategic CFO services to mainly privately held companies, but some of us, like myself, we have experience in the nonprofit world, and obviously some of us, especially for me, if I'm in the Washington, D.C. area, you can't turn the corner without running into a government contractor somewhere around here. So you have to also be open to serving the GovCon community. I'm a retired Air Force colonel. I served 26 years, got out in 2008, and I had sat for and passed the CPA exam before I retired, about 12 years before I retired. And I was doing work that I needed to have a CPA certification for when I was at the Pentagon. But regardless, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to provide you with some info. Everybody, I think, has heard the news that there's no money left in terms of the PPP or the EIDL, but most likely there'll be a second tranche of money with an additional appropriation coming through. So I think it's still important for companies that haven't prepared to do what they need to do to preparing for the second tranche, because most of the banks and most of the SBA lenders and most of the online lending companies are still accepting applications at this point. So we can go through the slide deck, and I can kind of go very, very quickly through that and then open it up for questions that anybody may have.
Let's see, I've got to open the slide deck because I just realized I opened the wrong one earlier.
Okay.
Well, let's just keep talking while I'm getting that together. Guillermo, what I think that I heard was they ran out of money, but did some states still have money to distribute?
There are different state programs. I know in the Washington, D.C. area, for instance, Maryland ran out of money weeks ago. They only had a limited amount of money. I know in Virginia, there are cities that they're offering their own programs. Where my son-in-law works is the city of Alexandria funded a lot of businesses with monies to allow their employees to have the infrastructure to work from home. So there was like telework funds that were available to certain businesses. It's important to check your localities to see what programs are available.
Okay, so I'm about to get your PowerPoint up.
Okay. All righty.
And I'll just tell me when you're done with each thing, because we've talked about.
That's the name of our firm. This is what we're going to talk about. Next slide. This is where there's, just real quick, this is where there's B2B CFOs all across the U.S. There's 188 of us. This slide is the slide that I was going to present to tell you all the wonderful programs that were available. The first two columns are the columns that everybody has been talking about. The Paycheck Protection Program, everything there is based on your monthly payroll costs, and people could ask for a maximum of $10 million. The interest rate is at 1%. The 2-year term, the first 6 months are deferred, and then you can qualify for a 100% forgiveness as long as you meet the criteria that we'll discuss really, really quickly. And then the qualifications is you had to have been in business in February of 20, and you had to have had less than 500 employees, unless you were one of the businesses that qualified under the size standard, the SBA size standard, or you were a franchise food operation. The economic the economic injury disaster loan was is a program that was a straight loan up to $2 million. The interest rate was fixed at 3.75%. And then the term was a little bit longer. It could be up to a 10-year term in terms of the payments. For government contractors specifically, Section 3610 of the CARES Act provides for payroll relief of GovCons for any leave benefit that you would have to pay any employees that could not perform their duties in what is called, in quotations, a federal site. The act really doesn't go into what's considered a federal site, but I'm going to guess that it's the place of performance that's been that's typically listed in a government contract. I think that would qualify as a site. And then the the Small Business Administration has a bunch of other lending programs that are available, and they're still open for business, some of which are very good, and some of which, depending on what type of lender you use, are available to you in terms of getting money to you very quickly. And very quickly is also depending on how fast the SBA can turn around the application. Some SBA preferred lenders are able to make these loans on their own without having to go back to the SBA. So you have to look for a preferred lender. Next slide. There we go. This just goes into how the maximum loan amount is computed. These are the items that I want to move really quickly through this. So if you've seen this already, if you didn't, then we can come back to it and you can ask questions. But basically, there's a formula that tells you how to compute the maximum loan amounts. And there's two caveats. One is no funds for any salaries above 100K, and does not include salaries of anybody that doesn't live in the US. Next slide. Once again, this goes into the calculation, but it talks a little bit about the forgiveness. Essentially, the forgiveness is it's 100% if you match the amount of monies that you paid in terms of the covered period. The covered period is the look-back period that was used to determine the maximum loan amount. The issue here, and this is where people will fall into a trap, and they have to be very careful. The issue here is the calculation was based on 2.5 months worth of your monthly average. However, the benefit is essentially 8 weeks or 2 months. So that 0.5% is supposed to be used for the other type of expenses. So anything related to rent, utilities, or interest on mortgage obligations of the building. So if you own your own building, you're paying a note on it, you can claim the interest, but you can't claim the actual principal. So the caveat here is be careful that because you can only get credit for 8 weeks worth of payroll, you're going to have money left over. And so I advise clients that if they didn't have huge rent payments or huge utility payments, to essentially don't ask for the money, because if you can't use it, it does convert to a loan. So only 25% of the funds that you get can be used for non-payroll costs and still be eligible for forgiveness. And then there's some rules there that if you reduce the salary of anybody by more than 25%, that you also will get dinged in terms of the forgiveness amount. So we have to be careful with that as well. Next slide. The people that provide were SBA lenders. That was a wild, wild west because some lenders didn't want to provide loans to people that they didn't do business with. And then other lenders were applying to the SBA to become an SBA approved lender for this program. So, so there was a lot of confusion there, and there's a lot of people that lost faith and they didn't submit a package because at first even their own banks said they weren't accepting loans from depository clients, but only from credit clients. So Bank of America was a bank that did that, but they changed their mind after they got bad press. So and they opened it up to everybody. But then there was other lenders that came into the mix. Some platforms such as Lendio.com, Fundera.com are, and they're still accepting applications right now. I checked online before I logged on, and they're still accepting applications. So Lendio is Lendio.com, and Fundera is Fundera.com. Next slide, please. So there's no money. So what do I do now? I would say, I would recommend strongly that you still gather your data. Like I said before, there is probably going to be more money, and it's better to be prepared now with all the information that you need to put together to be able to apply for a loan. The types of things that the most lenders are asking for are payroll reports. If you don't pay health insurance through payroll, they want some sort of evidence that you pay group health insurance. So you need to have records on that by name and by month. They want to make sure that you're not including in your calculations the salary of anybody over 100K. They want to make sure you can identify people who live outside the US. I would say if you use ADP or Paychecks or QuickBooks Payroll or any of those companies like that, they have created a special CARES Act report that helps to provide support to do the monthly calculation. So they do all the necessary calculations for you to come up with the gross payroll that's eligible to be used in the monthly calculations. The ADP calls it the CARES Act report, and it's very useful. And the other things that you need to put together and to have ready to go are your Forms 940s and your Forms 941s for the 2019 year. And if you're using some of the time in 2020, the most recent 941 was due 2 days ago. So if you have that, that would be helpful as well. And then any payroll registers that you may have. ADP, I think the best report would be the wage and tax report out of ADP that you can go in and set the dates, the from and to dates. That's probably the best report because that gives you gross salary, vacation, group health, and then also state and local taxes that you as an employer have incurred on behalf of your employees. Next slide. This slide, the only reason I put this slide in because there's a lot of people out there that were trying to charge people $1,000, $2,000 to do their loan application and whatnot. The law actually does not allow borrowers to be charged for any support in filling out the loan application. So people like me, we were supposed to be paid through the lenders, out of lenders' fees. However, the lenders are saying, we're not making any money off of this, and it's a lot of time, and so we're not going to pay you either, because they did change in the guidance, they did change the verbiage of how that was to be implemented, and they started using the word may instead of will. And so I decided, and a lot of my partners decided, that we were just going to do it anyways, just for goodwill. And so, this is a time of need. People need help. So we're, good karma will come around to us in the future. So we're offering our services essentially for free. So next slide, please. I actually have 2 other slides on my version. Sorry, Jenny, but I'll talk to them. One is how do you ask for loan forgiveness? Because that's going to be the next big thing that people are going to have questions about. One rule is you can't ask for loan forgiveness until at least 8 weeks after receiving the funds. Okay, because it's an 8-week payment period, so you need to have the evidence to be able to show that that you actually paid what you said you were going to pay. One other rule that people need to be aware is that payments on the loan are deferred for 6 months. So that gives you time to get all your paperwork together in order to start asking for the loan forgiveness. I'm guessing that most people will start asking for the loan forgiveness somewhere around 1 to 3 months after the 8-week period has expired. But I think it's good to start thinking about putting together the information that you need to put together to show evidence that you've paid. And it's the same evidence essentially that you used to apply for the loan. So the payroll registers, any evidence, canceled checks of rent or utilities, retirement plan contributions, any interest, any mortgage payments that you might have that show the interest that you paid, and things of that nature. Most likely, the loan forgiveness processing will go through the banks. There's no guidance right now. They haven't caught up to that yet. There's no guidance right now, so they'll probably come out with guidance like a day before we're supposed to do everything. If you have furloughed employees, the recommendation is to bring them back or hire replacements. I know of a firm that let some people go and they don't want to bring them back. They use this as an excuse to get rid of them. So they're hiring replacements instead of the furloughed or fired people. And that's supposedly that's so far so good. And then I'm most likely you'll have a few interim final guidance messages coming out from SBA. I've never heard that term, interim final guidance. It's either final or it's interim, but it can't be both. So, and then finally, some strategies that I've seen people who either couldn't qualify for PPP or are looking for other options. Like I said earlier, the SBA 7A program is still open, and there's a series of different loans that people can qualify up to $5 million. And that's just a normal program that the SBA has always had. I would go and try to identify an SBA preferred lender because they can make their own decisions without the SBA. There's 504 loans that are available for construction, for real estate, for equipment financing. If you're one of the lucky companies that is actually growing through this process or through this situation, that's available to you. The one good thing about the 7A, the 504, or a microloans are loans up to $50,000, is that the SBA automatically is going to pay the principal, the interest, and fees for any loans issued prior to September 27, 2020 for 6 months. So if you get a loan for the first 6 months, you're not going to have to make any payments on it. And so that might be, for cash flow purposes, that might be something that you may be interested in trying to access. If you currently have an established pre-authorized debit on any of those SBA loans, you need to go in and log in and cancel the pre-authorized debit for the 6 months. Otherwise, you're going to be paying and the SBA is going to be paying at the same time on the same loan. So if you have cash flow issues and you don't want to pay twice for the same payment, then you need to go in and cancel that for at least the next 6 months. Some of the things I've seen other companies do is ask employees to take a pay cut. Now, the only caveat there is be careful of the PPP requirement not to cut anybody's pay below the 25% threshold. There are insurance companies right now that are authorizing premium payment deferrals. I know, for instance, in this area, in the Washington, D.C. area, Care First Administrators, which is a big Blue Cross Blue Shield third-party administrator, they're offering payment deferrals of 2 months. And then when you start paying again, they will apply those 2 months over the next 7 months. So that's a good cash flow thing. And I counted, I think, up to 11 companies that are doing that, 11 health companies that are doing that. People are renegotiating the commercial rent leases. I have a few colleagues that are attorneys that represent tenants, and they're going to the landlords and they're renegotiating their lease or deferring their lease payments. Some people, you know, Cheesecake Factory, if you saw the news on the Cheesecake Factory, they just told their landlord, we don't have the money to pay and we're not going to pay you. And so you have to decide what bills you're going to pay and what bills you aren't going to pay. Regardless of that decision, I would say, please reach out to your lender, your creditor, your service provider, and let them know, and don't just not pay. And then there are some lenders that are offering asset-backed loans on securities. You know, like I have a client that has an endowment fund of $17 million that they really can't touch, but they can use as collateral for a very low interest rate loan. And so they're considering on doing that as well.
Okay. Guillermo?
This is the last bullet.
Okay.
Okay. And then there's business interruption insurance. Just check and make sure and see if COVID-19 is a covered event for business interruption insurance. That's it. That's the last one. Sorry if I took too long.
No, this was all good. And thank you for the information you provided. And we will send out to everybody a copy of your presentation so they'll have it. I just wanted to add a couple of things. I have been talking to people that needed my help to set up to respond to this Payroll Protection Act. And if you know of anybody that has questions, just like Guillermo, I'm going to help them. I created a little spreadsheet for it to help them out. And the main thing that I did was said, hey, let's do something to keep it really simple, because you're going to have to be sending this to a group that doesn't necessarily have any rules, and you kind of want to make it let's claim the simplest method. I did want to turn over and ask the participants what kind of questions they've got. And I think first what I should do is check the chat window. Does anybody want to put a question in the chat window for us to discuss? The main thing that I've heard is my expectation is just like Guillermo, that they will authorize more money later. So go ahead and get your information in order. And in general, what I tell people to do is let's use a standard report wherever we can, not a custom one, because this is going to be happening more. And it's always easier to use something that you've got that you've used before. I don't know if we've got any other questions from, I lost my chat. Okay, Garth has asked a great question. For defense contractors, if our contracts are ongoing, will we be eligible for PPP forgiveness? And I think Garth's question has to do with you're getting reimbursed on that. Guillermo, do you have a comment on that?
I do. Actually, for the PPP, there's a presumption in the law that you have been